Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to our Wednesday night live stream. Thank you for joining us. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn, young prodigy C.J. Vogel, and the latest member of the On Texas Football family who needs no introduction. It's my man, Jeff Howe. All right, gentlemen, we got a lot to get into on the show. There's the latest transfer portal acquisition for Longhorns. They got another defensive lineman, Hero Canoe. We'll get into that. Transfer from Ohio State. We'll also get into the reports the Longhorns are adding another coach to the staff, longtime Big 12 coach for Mike Gundy, Jason McIndoe. We'll get into that too coming up a little bit later on, talk about what that means. We'll also take all of your questions, super chats, jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time. We'll also talk transfer portal period, what the Longhorns could be looking for in the next transfer portal window that opens up. We'll get into some other news, notes, and nuggets from the 40 Acres recruiting related. We can do that as the show goes on as well. All right, folks, let's dive into it, guys. Let's talk about Hero Canoe. Was this a surprise? Did we see this coming? Or was this a fast developing thing, guys? When did this thing start to, form? And when did we get any sense that the Hero Canoe interest was actually substantive?
Really, whenever he decided he was going to take an official visit to Texas, there was, some conversations that we had in our OTF chat about whether or not he would be someone that Texas would be interested in after entering the portal from Ohio State. There wasn't a lot of snaps. There wasn't a lot of game tape for him whenever he did enter the portal, only 230 career snaps. So it didn't necessarily fit the mold of what we've seen Kenny Baker pursue out of the portal, which is north of about 600 snaps, 3 years of contributions. That prerequisite wasn't necessarily met. So it was a little bit of a surprise to see him on campus. And then you heard Texas A&M was interested. He was on the flight to go see Florida. Georgia wanted to get him on campus as well, which typically gives you a good understanding of how much talent there actually is despite the lack of production. But Texas, a big ad here. Jeff and I talked about it with Bobby Burton earlier today. It gives you some breathing room, right? It allows you to go into 2025 without stressing about perhaps a big injury to a Travis Shaw or Cole Rivard because, well, now you've got at least another body with 3 years of college weight training. You got 3 years of going through full football seasons as well. This is a big addition from a depth perspective, and it's one that certainly leads to another addition to kind of finalize that room for what will be the 25 roster.
Yeah. The more I think about it, guys, the thing I like about it most is that you're not going to have to rush the 3 true freshmen. They're all on campus this spring, and they're going through winter conditioning right now, and they'll go through spring ball. There's Justice Terry, Josiah Sharma, and Myra Charles. But, you like to play freshmen, and Texas has gotten this way at a number of positions now as Sark has built out this roster. If you're a freshman playing at Texas, by and large, it's because you're better than the guy in front of you. Why was Ryan Wingo playing in front of Jonte Cook? Well, it turns out Ryan Wingo's pretty good and maybe was a little more reliable than Jonte Cook on the field. So I like that scenario now because you added another veteran body. I also think it gives you breathing room, CJ, not just for the roster construction in terms of numbers, but now Kenny Baker can really dive into that because I think they need another tackle rod. I think they're going to take another interior defensive lineman. But I think it's going to let Kenny Baker get through spring ball and say, okay, you know what? I feel like I need a 3-technique penetrator. I need, a guy that could play multiple shades, or maybe, hey, I like what I got. I just need best available. Just give me the best available guy. So I just like it for, like you said, CJ, from a depth standpoint, and mainly because you don't have to rush those freshmen to rod. We talk about Texas needing to break that vicious cycle for so long. They've broken it. This is what the portal does. It can help you avoid those cycles where it's like, all right, we're just going to be a young team and have to play a bunch of freshmen. That's not the case because of the portal.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big get. I agree with CJ. It doesn't fit kind of the prototypical acquisition for the Longhorns in the portal. They usually like more proven commodities. Not necessarily a proven commodity, definitely a ton more upside with this young man because you get to 2 years of eligibility. And I mean, he hasn't been playing football very long, right? I read this right. This guy's been playing football for like 4 or 5 years total, American football.
Yeah.
That's that's a lot of upside for a guy who's already, showing you that he can play at a high level. So I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. He's pretty much a 3. He's been playing a 3 technique, right?
Yeah.
With Ohio State.
Okay. Yeah, he's a 3-5 guy. One other thing I think that's kind of interesting, and maybe still something to keep in mind when going to the spring portal, is Travis Shaw is very much of a guy, very highly talented, recruited out of high school, very talented, has the athleticism for a big guy. Not a full-time starter the way Cole Brevard was. And so when you look at the way that this roster was constructed a year ago, look, you had 4 years of Alfred Collins. You had 3 years of Vernon Broughton really contributing for your football team. And then you had 2,000 snaps with Jermaine Lole. There's 400 or 500 snaps coming in with Travis Shaw, but he's not a guy that Texas, when you stack up the 2 rosters from this upcoming year versus last year, that this 2025 roster, it's going to be pretty low on that accumulated snap totals coming into a season. So that's going to be something to monitor as well. If they go get somebody else in the portal, as Jeff was looking or mentioning for the spring session, I have to imagine that's a guy with 4 years of contributions, 1,000 snaps or so, someone that's played a lot and a lot of football.
Yeah. Also, let's not lose sight of this, guys. Ohio State's a tough program to go in and be a developmental player, because the kind of guys they're recruiting, you're not recruiting a ton of projects. You're recruiting guys to come in and give you something right off the bat. So I think he may have got lost in the shuffle a little bit. So from that standpoint, I'm not going to say it's found money, Rod, because you need numbers, but this guy's got some upside. I think it's intriguing. And I've seen a couple people mention in the chat. CJ just got through talking about it. I think Sark and Kenny Baker and PK make an exception because, all right, this kid had some upside. Hey, there are a lot worse ways to spend your first 3 years of college as a defensive lineman than in that room with Larry Johnson learning how to play the position. So Kenny Baker's getting a piece of clay that's been molded a little bit, and maybe Kenny Baker can finish it off, and Texas can get him a good piece of that interior D-line rotation. I'll say this too. Don't forget, when we talk about spring portal, you're thinking, okay, maybe the winter portal was, not great in terms of high-end defensive tackle talent. Maybe the spring window won't be either. But you added Bill Norton and Jermaine Lole were both spring ads. Good so point. You can still find quality defensive linemen in the spring portal window.
And Texas now up to 82 scholarships as well. So plenty of wiggle room when it comes to additions, as well as what we would expect to be some attrition following that spring portal window as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know he got kind of lost in the shuffle, but there were a lot of people that expected him to be in the rotation, the 2 deep there at Ohio State next season, or competing to be in that 2 deep. So, man, I think it's a quality ad, a quality acquisition for the Longhorns. But I agree with Jeff. I think you got to add more. You lost so much attrition on that defensive line period. Where you're talking about transfer portal, not guys with starts, of course, but still lost a ton of depth. And then the guys, of course, that are leaving who have exhausted their eligibility. You just lost a lot. Again, it's a good problem to have. I mean, you're able to bring in guys, develop them, utilize them really well. But I mean, once again, just like last season, you're looking for big bodies and late in the spring. So Shivram here says, is Texas done at D-line, or do they need one more? Jeff just said it. They need one more.
Yeah. Because I've got a feeling Kenny Baker and PK would agree with me. I want those young guys to play if they're good enough, if they're ready. I don't want to have to play them because I don't have any other options.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the smart way to go about it. If you are Joshi Manning, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Good to see all the boys. Is CJ going for a mustache? CJ, I think CJ's really. Oh, so CJ's got some.
We'll blame the lighting. Everything's still here.
Yeah, he still got exactly. It's all good.
I'm not the mustache kind. I've never rocked it. I don't think I ever will.
I'm sure the ladies like what CJ's got going on. He's good. All right, let's. I want to get to talking honestly about. We'll get to some of CJ's thoughts too about the Senior Bowl because I see CB wants to get to a tweet about that you had about the quarterbacks there at the Senior Bowl. So we'll get your thoughts about it too. But there's also a report the Longhorns added another coach to the coaching staff as well. I want to talk about that a little bit. And he got a Big 12 background, Jason McIndoe, who has worked with Oklahoma State and with Mike Gundy for the last decade or so, coaching their cowboy back, actually, their tight ends and tight end / fullback. It's one of those kind of hybrid positions. Before that, he was coaching offensive line. Actually, he had an offensive line background. I think he's a center too, by trade. When he played ball, he was actually a center, so he's an offensive lineman too. We talked about this, CJ, actually at one point, I believe, with Coach Shipley, and I'll give Coach Shipley some props because the question was, where should they add another coach? Remember this conversation about where should they add a quality? They can add a coach anywhere. Of course, support staff, you can do whatever you want to do. Where do they need to add one? And I believe he said, give Jeff Banks some help. He was like, add either another tight ends coach or something like that. I think you said special teams coach too. So you were kind of in that same conversation as well, or at least in that same realm. This is, I think, kind of exactly what he was pointing out, bringing in somebody, because your tight end position right now is the most inexperienced that you've had since you've been on campus. You really got no proven commodities in that room, a lot of talent, a lot of upside, but no proven commodities in that room. Sark says it's the second most important position in the offense. And, you really got to put a lot of coaching, a lot of attention, a lot of detail into that position this offseason, spring. So I think maybe that's the thought process behind bringing in someone with that background. I'm sure there can be other components and other, I'm sure, additive elements that he's going to bring to the table. But that's probably the more common sense reason, right? Maybe.
Yeah, on top of that, I think there's some staff continuity there, right? Jeff, didn't you reported or you put up on the site earlier today how many ties he has to the staff already, right?
Yeah, worked with PK at Montana State and played with Jeff Banks and Chris Jackson at Washington State. So he's got some connections to the staff.
There it is. Yeah. I think that's important too, because we've talked about Sarkisian being extended, right? Texas not having to go coordinator searching really since he's arrived. But on top of that, you retain a Jeff Banks, right? You've retained some really important pieces from a year ago. Now, Sark's had to go out there and add some guys with Chris Jackson, Kenny Baker, right? You had to go get a Tashard Choice. But all in all, when you can come into a year knowing that room is going to work together and has worked together in the past, that's really encouraging. And this is just another way that you can point to several different ties, connections, previous relationships that could help mold this team for next season. Again, I kind of look at the connections Johnny Nansen brought with him. Texas isn't in a position to add as many guys out of the portal a year ago if it's not for those connections with Johnny Nansen. So working together with previous, connections, it's like you two hopping back on the mic. Y'all have that previous connection. You hop on smoothly, right? I'm hoping that's going to be very much the case with McIndoe joining this group as well. Just kind of being able to be a soundboard, bounce some ideas, and really start coaching together, very quickly from the start.
Hopefully McIndoe, his time in the Big 12, he didn't have as many Kansas rants behind closed doors like I did on Longhorn Blitz back in the day, Rod. I was like CJ throwing the hat at times.
Oh, man.
I like this.
Back there.
Rod, there it is. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. One of the games we often talk about, Rod, go back to 2018, that Texas-Oklahoma State game. Texas comes in 6th in the country. They had that winning streak after lost opener to Maryland. And we talk about the great game plan that Mike Gundy and Mike Yurcich had. And McIndoe was part of that because how much two-back stuff did it was like Chuba Hubbard playing fullback with Justice Hill at tailback and getting Corndog Cornelius involved in the run game. So I think, and it's great that Jerry joins us because Jerry, you and CJ can both speak.
I heard somebody was going to talk about corn dogs, so I came in.
Corn dog, yeah. Nice reference.
Rod's hosting the show, so no talk about mayo or white condiments, period. But Nick Townsen and Jordan Washington both You don't necessarily have to have those guys try to be inline tight ends. You can move them around and do some different things with them. So, and this is not in so much the vein of, I think sometimes when we think about adding an analyst or special assistant, you think about, okay, Gary Patterson, he's got to bring these big picture ideas in. No, man, look, Scotty Hazelton just helped with some coverage tweaks and working with the nickels, or, it's Payam Sadat coming in a couple years ago with fixing some blitz stuff on defense. So that's kind of what I think. It's a tweak. And look, I've said Sark's offense this spring for him can be a blank canvas, because there's so much changing. He shouldn't go into spring with any preconceived notions about, oh, we need to be a 12 personnel offense or whatever. Just let it take over. And I think even though Nick Townsend's not in this spring, with the kind of guys you've got at that tight end position, man, don't try to force him to be inline blockers. See if you can get him into that cowboy back mold and move him around a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, those guys, honestly, when you look at them, and I've always kind of said this, because Emery Winston's like 6'2", 230, somewhere around there. Nick Townsend's about 6'3", 230, somewhere around there, somewhere around there. And I've been saying this for a while. I do think Sark, the future of football to me is positionless football. It's going to be a kind of more multiplicity. And I don't think Sark wants to major in that. He's not trying to be what Kyle Shanahan is on offense. But I do think at one point, I think he wants to have an element of it in his offense. I think he wants to kind of minor in it. Not saying this is what that's going to be. But I wouldn't doubt what you're saying about some guys, the guys he's recruiting now. They do seem to have more of that versatility, hybridism in their skill set. And I wouldn't doubt, whether you're talking about Michael Terry too, throw him in there. If Sark wants to weaponize that just a little bit, just in certain elements. And he could get extreme with it and be versatile, be multiple within the down, right? You can go from different personnel groupings to one. You can go from 11 personnel and then, shift your wide receiver, back into the backfield, and all of a sudden you're 21 personnel, right? You can do things like that can be really, really exotic. Or you can just have elements of it where you have one or two guys that are multiple chess pieces. So I think that may be kind of something that's foreshadowing what Sark wants to do. And maybe the cowboy back could be a part of that. You just brought up some great examples of it, Jeff. Every time Sark brings in, and I admire him for this, brings in some assistant coach or some, I would say, analyst or, whatever. He seems to take different, I would say, parts of their ideology and apply them to his blueprint to win. We saw that with Johnny Nansen. With how exotic the coverage has got. You just brought up Scotty Hazelton. Paul Chryst came in and they started upping their usage of the 6-0 line package. That was something Paul Chryst was known for. Bringing in extra offensive linemen. Brendan Marion comes in with the go-go offense. They're running a lot more two tailback sets. He implements a lot of the elements of the go-go offense that year, and then even going forward, right? He siphons a lot of these ideas from Gary Patterson with PK. We saw that as well. I do think that you could get some ideas from him in terms of the cowboy back and their usage. By the way, I did some research, and apparently he came up with the name cowboy back. Mike Gundy told him, he said it's just going to be a fullback tight end hybrid, and Mike Gundy told him that was boring. He said that's boring, and we can't recruit to that. So come up with something cool that we can recruit to that I can market. And he said he came back to him and said cowboy back, and Gundy was like, I love it. We can recruit to that. So that's, and by the way, another cool story is Dabo Swinney actually recommended to Mike Gundy that he hire him. He met Dabo by chance in an elevator at some coaches convention, got his email, said he emailed Dabo every month for a year, and he said he would respond to him within 30 minutes to an hour. He get a response from Dabo. When it was questions, all kind of coaches about coaching and different things about, trying to become a career coach, whatever. And he said, basically developing a relationship with Dabo. He said Dabo recommended him, and Gundy didn't hire him immediately because Dabo told him, hey, man, I recommended you for this job. And Dabo did not hire him. Gundy did not hire him immediately. It was, I think, maybe like a couple of years later. And then he got a call from Gundy and was like, hey, I want to hire you for my tight ends coach.
Nice. Hey, Jerry, I want you to take this real quick because we're talking about cowboy backs and tight ends and guys that can move. You've been pretty adamant that Nick Townsend isn't going to have a problem with the physicality of the SEC. You've seen him way more than I have. I just didn't know if you could expound on that.
Yeah, look, he is one of the rare guys that I've seen that I just don't think at the tight end position, because a lot of those guys split out. They play split wide, right? There's not many inline guys, true inline guys that are asked to really mash in the run game and do so against great competition, line up against guys that are 250 pounds across from them at the high school level. Nick Townsen is a special type of physicality. Rod noticed that the first time we ever watched the tape with him, and it shows up at linebacker as much as it does anywhere else. But he comes to – and it's just a shame he's not a midterm guy, because I think if he was, him and Jordan Washington would be have a chance to be an unbelievable – and I'm not saying anything negative about the other guys, but those two guys from a size, speed standpoint as a combo would have a chance to be unbelievable. Early on. I think it'll take Nick some time, but from a physical standpoint and physicality standpoint, this guy is not going to miss a beat. I mean, look, and he's one of those guys that they'll play him at tight end from everything we hear, but he's like, just put me on the field. I don't really care. I'll rush the quarterback. I'll play linebacker. I'll go hit. It just doesn't matter. Nice. So he has that rare physicality about him, and he does so at 6'3", 235, and he ran 10.9. at 100 meters last spring. And the dad was at his pride. The other thing with him is he's just a baller. He's like Quandre Diggs, man, at Rod. The dad was there at practice. He was the short snapper, long snapper, kickoff return, punt block team. He lined up at tight end, wildcat quarterback, running back, split him out wide, rush in, middle linebacker. I mean, the only thing he didn't do is kick, and I was just there for an hour and a half. I mean, like, it's like he's just a ball player, and he's physical, and he loves contact. He welcomes contact. He hunts contact. But then if you try to contact him and he breaks a tackle, he may go 60. He's that level athlete. By the way, I wanted to let people know that I'm going to hang out after this live stream. I'm here to listen to these guys mostly, and we're going to do a little live stream, take recruiting questions for the first half of the Texas versus Chris Beard game. So I'll hang out here. We'll watch the game. If anybody wants to stay on for that, I'm sure some people will. But yeah, so I was just listening to you guys watching the Real Housewives reunion of Salt Lake City. Rod, I know you're jealous. Your wife's probably watching it right now.
I believe she watches it on Peacock. And when I go in there, every time I go in there from doing this job, my wife has Housewives on, or one of them reality shows, those trash reality shows. And I'm on some of them, and I won't let you know which ones. Jerry.
Hey, by the way, Brendan Bowersox had a comment up here I saw comparing Justice Terry to Rashawn Gary, and he said it before, and I agreed with him then. That's a pretty good one, man. Bowersox is on to something with that. I was actually told today that Texas is extremely impressed with Justice Terry from the bowl practices. Extremely impressed. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a star day one of college football. Yeah. All I'm saying is he's meeting the ranking right now early on with what his upside looks like it can be. The way he's working.
Oh, see, now you got Longhorn fans all excited, all titillated with that little nugget.
I brought him some joy mode.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what that was. That was a joy mode.
That's a tease to drop that little nugget in and then have them watch a Texas basketball game right after, Jerry. So well done.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually my man Jerry's commentary, watching Rodney Terry versus Chris Beard. That's oh man, he's been taking, and Jerry. If Jerry's in a salty mood, man, he's gonna take some shots too. All right, let's thank one of our sponsors, Brett Robin, before we move on here. Because I'm glad we got Jerry on. Because speaking of Justice Terry, I wanted to get to those numbers I was talking about yesterday about the metro areas and the fertile recruiting grounds around the country. So I updated them. I'll get to those in a second. But first, let's get to our friend and my former teammate, Dr. Brett Robin. That's right, Dr. Brett Robin, Austin's orthopedic specialist. He's at the Austin Orthopedic Institute, and they are one of the sponsors of our Wednesday night live stream. Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, a lifetime Longhorn, my former teammate, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, management, and total joint replacements. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robert is accepting new patients right now. And if you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robert a call today at 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000, and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. Thank you very much to Dr. Brett Robin for being a sponsor of the Wednesday Night Live Stream and for being a part of the Owen Texas football family. All right, let's see if I'll get to the questions here in just a second, guys. I want to get this because we brought up Justice Terry, so it made me start thinking about the research I did about the metro areas, because I even doing this recruiting class, right, 2025 recruiting class, I basically looked at how many of those guys were from those metro areas, and basically 77% of your recruiting class is from what I would call a hot spot, basically a metro area, top 10 metro area for producing NFL talent. And I've been doing this since 2020 because you got 4 guys from Atlanta, from the Atlanta metro area, right? That greater Atlanta, 5 from Houston, 7 from greater DFW, the Metroplex, if you will. And then there's 1 from Tampa, St. Pete area, I believe, Jerry, as well. So it made me start thinking about it. So these are a couple of factoids that I have about, and these are the top metro areas based on my research since 2020 for producing NFL draft picks.
Yeah.
Atlanta's number 1.
Yeah.
Right? Atlanta's producing 15 per year. That's 15 NFL draft picks per year, dude. That Atlanta area. Number 2 is DFW. And they're kind of far behind. They're a little less, they're like 11, a little over 11 and a half per year for DFW. LA is tied with Miami. They're almost 11 per year as well. Houston slides into the top 5 at 4th. They're at 9 draft picks per year coming out of that greater Houston area. The Baltimore, DC area, which is a weird, I didn't realize it snuck into the top 5. They're at almost 7 per year in that area. A lot of them coming out of there. 6 was the Detroit, greater Detroit area, almost 6 there. Then there's the tri-state, which is New York, New Jersey is a little tri-state area right there. That's at 5 per year. Tampa, that's that Tampa St. Pete area. They're at a little less than 5 NFL draft picks per year being produced from that great area. Then there's Charlotte, jumps into the top 10. And Charlotte's tied with Baton Rouge, actually.
Yeah.
Baton Rouge area. And then I got Phoenix right after that, and then Cleveland goes in there. So, and here are a couple of factoids for you. So, and then this jumps to commitments. So we did the NFL side. Now let's look at commitments, right? Power for commitments since 2021. And shout out to evaluation period, because I got a lot of these numbers from them. So if you look at Texas, if you look at the top 10, all right, schools in the high schools in the state of Texas for producing Power 4 commitments since 2021, only 1 high school is not in Houston or DFW. Who is it?
Austin Westlake.
Damn, you're damn right. Yeah. Isn't that wild? That's crazy. That's crazy. All right, and that's 2-1. How about this? And this goes to how hot Atlanta is. If you look at the top 10 high schools for producing Power 4 commitments since 2021, only 2 of them are outside of Atlanta. Langston Hughes High School and Lee County High School. I don't know.
And Langston Hughes is on that greater Atlanta area. It's not that far outside of actual Atlanta. Lee County is down south towards Macon and a little west, I believe. I've been over there a couple of times. They had the stud running back this year. But, yeah, no, it makes sense. Rod Atlanta, greater Atlanta area is easily the most talented area in the country. It's why I've said Georgia's the best recruiting job in the country if you do it right.
And that's why Texas is like, no, we getting up in there. We got to.
They've offered more. Hey, Texas has offered more guys from Georgia in this cycle. They offered 2 today than ever before. It's not even close what they're doing in Georgia right now. I mean, they had 4 coaches in Georgia the last couple of days, counting Chris Gilbert being on the road. They've never done that before.
Okay. Wow. Well, see, yeah. So I'll apologize. The metro areas thing, sometimes they're weird.
Right. No doubt.
Sometimes they don't. But see, Jerry knows because Jerry been there. I didn't know that. So throw that. You can throw them in there too. That's to say that's how deep it is there in Atlanta. Florida's the same way. If you look at the top 10 high school, that the high school is producing powerful commitment since 2021. Every high school is south of Orlando.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, that whole line, I mean, St. Thomas Aquinas south, they're from Broward to Dade, Miami, Northwestern Central, all those, that Booker T. Washington. I don't know if they're on the list. I'd have to go look at them. But, Deerfield Beach is probably, I don't know, they may have been a little bit before that. The coaches move around so much down there and the kids follow. So it's a wild, wild west there. But, absolutely. That Dade Broward maybe has the best skill kids in the country I see. And their kids, they're totally raw. Not to go Neon Badeau here, but they're totally raw kids physically, and then they just blow up when they get to colleges.
Yeah, Rod, you talk about south of Orlando. That's that old state of Miami that Howard Schnellenberger used to talk about. Just kind of draw a rope around that part, go from I-4 from kind of Tampa over to Orlando, and then down South Florida, and just Miami won of a few national championships just recruiting that part of the state of Florida.
And for the state of Florida, for the Texas fans that are just getting kind of accustomed to Florida, here's the key. There's different areas where FSU, Miami, and Florida have recruiting success. Dade and Broward, somebody asked in Coffee and Football this morning, we didn't get to it. Why doesn't Texas recruit more in Miami? Man, that's you want to talk about the wild, wild west. Now, I used to live down there. It's wild in recruiting now down there. So Miami and FSU dominate that area. Nick Saban came in and did well. Kirby Smart at Georgia's done well. Ohio State did well because they had the Urban Meyer was at Florida, then Ohio State connection with the Boses in Ohio State, and they did well. But by and large, Dade Broward, amongst the Florida State, when they're good, they dominate that area. I-4 corridor, Tampa, up to Orlando, up to Jacksonville. That's always been a Florida stronghold. They have the most success there when they're going well. So that in the Panhandle of Florida is totally different. That's closer to Auburn than anything, right? Auburn, FSU. So that's a little different, but that's kind of that state breakdown. And Texas will had multiple coaches. Kenny Baker was out today, going to see the top D lineman down in that southwest part of Florida where Myron Charles came from. Duerville, the kid from Fort Myers is a name to know. He is top 3 D lineman in the country. He's a guy Texas is going to be going after. All right, hey, I got to take the call. I'll be right back.
Yeah, CJ will be at one of those football factories tomorrow. Rod going to Destrehan, alma mater of Ed Reed. CJ, you'll get to see some talent down there in at Destrehan, kind of metro New Orleans area.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Of course, that's home of 2026 wide receiver Jabari Mack, who was on campus this past Saturday. Actually, Chris Jackson stopped by there Monday as well. So Texas making a big run for Destrehan. Jeff, you remind me, because not many of those big-time Destrehan playmakers leave the state of Louisiana. I know LSU, there was a lot of pressure there to stay in state, to go play in Baton Rouge. It's not too far from Baton Rouge, so Texas making that a big, emphasis at the moment. Hey, come to Texas, come be a part of something over here. Fighting Brian Kelly for these guys in state, not going to be easy, however.
The one Destrehan guy Texas has been able to get was Gerald Wilbon back in 2016. Gerald was a guy that LSU kind of looked at, but they just felt he was too much of a project for them. But they actually recruited his teammate because Glenn Logan was at Destrehan at the same time, so they recruited his teammate. Gerald Wilbon ended up going to Texas, and Gerald Wilbon wasn't a very productive player, but he finished his eligibility, and he was on that team that he helped Texas win a Sugar Bowl once upon a time in New Orleans. So, Malcolm Roach, you talk about that Baton Rouge area, Malcolm Roach is from Baton Rouge. So, in Texas, it used to just be, hey, when you go into SEC territory, just hit some spots in Louisiana. No, especially CJ where you're at, that I-10 corridor going toward, Mobile and then down into Florida. Texas is making some inroads there. Like we talked about, I think we talked about at some point this week, but Texas is a national brand now. And you go into the SEC, man, the scenario I laid out, look, if there's a kid in, let's say he's in Mobile, there's a corner there that you like, and, Auburn, LSU, and Alabama are recruiting him, well, you better be on that kid too, because if he ends up playing against you, 2 years from now, that's a kid that can beat you. He can cost you a conference championship. So, yeah, it's I like where Sark is devoting the resources in the Southeast right now.
No doubt. They're picking those hot spots, though. I mean, they're really attacking those metro areas they got to own. DFW, H-Town, Atlanta, and then they kind of cherry pick guys from there. But there's no doubt about it, man. They're doing a great job right now. All right, let's get to some questions. Yeah, Jerry had to go. Jerry's like Adam Schefter here, says the Texas chick. It's Jerry having to give y'all the feeling Adam Schefter taking calls. It did feel like that. It's like, I got to go. It's like, okay, all right. Hope it's good news. I'm looking at my phone too. Like, hold up, Jerry, is he gonna text us? What's going on? I want to know too. All right, so I don't know what's going on. I assume it's good news when Jerry just hops off like that. All right, it could just be for dramatic effect. It still worked because he got me. Now I'm interested. All right, let's get to some questions here. D1 Darryl, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. How did Rondale Moore get away from Texas? He was one of the most impactful true freshmen I've seen. He wants to know, how did Rondale Moore get away from Texas? Yeah.
From what I remember, CJ, you can fill in the gaps, but from what I remember, the school that he go to, I forget what the connection is, but the Brom family had a connection at the high school Rondale Moore went to in Louisville. So when Jeff Brom got the Purdue job, it was pretty much sealed that Rondale Moore was going to Purdue. He just basically was following Jeff Brom.
Yeah, that's very much along the lines of what I remember. It was, I don't know if it was a family member or immediate coach or whatever it was. It basically, once he signed with Purdue, that was it. So, you know what, this is, who I trust, who I want to be coached by, who I trust to develop me. Ended up working out pretty well for him. But yeah, that whole cycle was frustrating for Texas because you had Rondale Moore. And you said, okay, we also want Jaylen Waddle. And then you said, okay, well, now we're going to end up with, was it Joshua Moore? So.
Yeah, I was told straight up by a member of the Tom Herman staff that they didn't like the fact that Jaylen Waddle wanted assurances he'd be the only slot guy in the class. They didn't want to give him those assurances, so no Jaylen Waddle to Texas.
I entered the chat at a bad time. Now I got to go take more joy mode.
Yeah, everybody wants to know if you hopped off for good news or bad news. That's all, Jerry.
But good
news or bad news. That's all.
But I do think it brings up a good point. I thought in terms of recruiting wide receivers, Tom Herman was way too rigid. Just like, oh, my 8, I've got to have an H, and I've got to have an X, and I've got to have a Z. Man, Sark is he's just recruiting speed. He's just recruiting tools, and they'll teach conceptually. They'll teach the wide receiver positions to everybody, and everybody will find their own place once you line it up in an 11 or 10 personnel or whatever. But I just like that the rigidity is gone.
The crazy thing about it is he recruited that H position and he told me because I wanted to know, does the H stand for hybrid? It stood for hybrid, and he never hybridized those guys. He never hybridized Duvernay. He never really hybridized Jake Smith. He would have the hybrid, but he never hybridized the players. We were just talking about this with Sark's offense, right? That he's going to have some of these hybrids within his offense in the future. And, I don't know why he was so rigid because the guys on the outside, the big receivers, we know that's what he wanted. Guys who can win 50-50 balls on the outside. But he never got into the hybrids. He never utilized the hybrids or the tight ends as much as I thought he would, considering how much he recruited tight ends and hybrids early on. Remember that?
Yeah. He stockpiled them. Didn't know what to do with them all the time, but he stockpiled them. Yeah. Hey, Jerry, you or CJ, whichever one of y'all wants to take this. I'm interested. I don't see Jamie French ever being a 200-pound guy, but like Khalil Lockett, his body type, when he's done filling out, where do you think Khalil Lockett gets to in terms of his weight?
Ooh. I think 200 is probably fair. Khalil Lockett, I think he remains too wiry to go past that. It's one of those things where you don't want to lose the flexibility, the big ball catching. You talk about what he can do down the field. One of his strengths is going up and getting the football. I don't think you want to sacrifice that for becoming a truly, quote-unquote, big body, like a Herman big body in that sense. So 200, 205 maybe. But other than that, I'd be shocked if he got any bigger. I remember going into this past year, the only wide receiver on roster who was north of 200 pounds, there was only one. It might have been Matthew Golden, like right at 200, or he might have been 195. It's slipping my mind who it might have been if it wasn't Golden, but there wasn't really anybody above 2 bills, which is kind of where you saw.
I think Ryan Wingo was listed at 2.
Then yeah, there it is.
I
knew it was somebody who contributed. My brain's all sorts of out of whack. But Ryan Wingo, he was playing at 205, right? It was just breaking the cusp of that 200 pound limit. Texas Sarkisian, to talk about that Herman transition, everybody basically was over 200 pounds. Not so much anymore. So I'd be shocked if that continued to be something that Texas continued to push for, was those bigger, heavier bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I actually, Jeff, one of the things I've said before on Jamie French and Josie, I saw your comment. I think he's going to mirror A.D. Mitchell frame-wise. So I think he's going to get up to 205 pounds.
Okay, nice.
And I say that because, look, he is – and I always say it's nothing against the coaches in Florida. They do a really good job with what they have at their disposal to work with. But it's just not the setup there for the public school kids. So these kids come out so raw physically. So Jamie French is in between 180 and 185. I don't know what he weighed in at when he reported to Austin on January 13th, but he's got 20 pounds on that frame. You can see it when you see him in person. CJ, you saw him in person, I believe. I mean, he is kind of that wiry, strong South Florida kid that actually grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. But he's going to be about A.D. Mitchell frame-wise. I think I can see him being 6'2", 200, 202, 203, 205 in a couple of years. I can see that.
I could see that. I stood next to him at the junior day. That's the first time I've been close to him, shaking his hand and everything. So, yeah, I could see that. It was funny. CJ was talking about that, Rod. I've told you this story, Jerry. I don't know if you remember this, but after the 2010 debacle, I was talking to a member of the Texas staff, the former Texas staff at that point that I saw on the road, and we were talking about just different positions and kind of where it got away. And we started talking about wide receivers, and the coach told me straight up, he said, we got so concerned with trying to find the next Lima Swede that one day we looked up and realized our receiver room was full of just a bunch of big guys that couldn't run very fast. So you can get so fixated on a body type or something that you lose focus. But if you're gonna get hyper focused on something, let it be speed, explosive playmaking ability. That's what Sark is getting hyper focused on.
Hey, by the way, somebody asked about Des Bryant at Lufkin. I'll answer this. I saw Des. The crazy thing is I went to Lufkin. It must have been Reggie McNeil, and I can't remember who else was on that team. I'm getting old. But, Coach Outlaw, rest in peace, said, my young receiver's he's going to be unbelievable. And so I went out. It was during spring. I went and watched Des run the hurdles. And I was like, oof, this guy. And he was just chiseled naturally, man. And I think 195 probably in high school when I saw him. But that dude was built a little different at an early age.
Still the best. If I'm power ranking the guys I've seen in person, Jerry, in terms of Texas high school football players, he's number one for me. Still to this day.
Yeah. Wow. Patrick Page, that was his 10th grade year the first time I saw him. Yeah. I mean, he was a chiseled kid. He must have been chiseled coming out of the womb. By the way, hey, Rod, do you think anybody will ever wear a DBU hat on Texags?
See, it is a random shot. I like it. You know what I mean? It's always a good time to take a shot at the Aggies. Yeah, but no, hell no, they won't do it. They can go to Wrecking Crew stuff. So. Can they go Wrecking Crew? Do they bring back the Wrecking Crew? Do they do that? Or can
possible?
Can they do that? I don't know. I don't know. They've been that good defensively. They are good defensively. I don't know if they've been that good defensively. All right. Someone says you would know, Jerry. All right. Let's do Taylor Johnson, who has a super chat. Thank you, Taylor. We appreciate it. What happened with Amari Black? Seeing good hype coming in, but didn't really play. Figured he'd be the guy at 25, but he transferred. My theory, guys, is that he when Gunnar Helm, basically had a breakout season. It's one of the best tight ends in the country. He fulfilled what basically Amari Black would have been needed for. which was a down the field explosive threat, and a guy that can beat man-to-man coverage. Gunnar Helm proved that he can do all that. Be a yak daddy, be all that. So they didn't. The plan was, well, because I think the plan was like, well, if Gunnar Helm, we know he's going to be good. We just, if there's something that he's not bringing to the table, we don't want the offense to be limited in that way. We can supplement with a little Amari Black. You didn't really need that, and then he's not an A+ blocker. The reason Juan Davis got on the field is because he was a plus blocker, and he's actually a liability as a blocker. And they didn't need him necessarily in the passing game to be a threat. That's my theory about it.
CJ, if they knew that they were gonna lose Amari Black before when in that 5-day window after the Cotton Bowl, you think they would have pressed a little harder for Max Clare, or you think one necessarily didn't have anything to do with the other?
I do think in a way it's independent of one another, because what's this conversation been even with Amari Black is, well, Jordan Washington's looks pretty darn good behind the scenes. And Jerry, I know you're very high, and most of us here are very high on Nick Townsen. It's tough to rely that much on youth at the tight end spot, especially with how much Sarkisian relies on that position to be the bridge between the run game, the pass game, the second most important position on his roster. But right now, you look at kind of the physical presence of what Townsen and what Washington will bring to this roster. It's much different actually than what Amari Black brings physically. And that's why I was just never really completely bought into Black being the focal point at the tight end spot, right? I thought that last year he would be a guy that they would flex out in 12 personnel, make life difficult for defenses who couldn't switch off personnel to suit for what would be just a pseudo wide receiver out wide, but they never really did that. And as a result, you saw Juan Davis kind of take over that position as often as he did. The physicality at the tight end spot, it's a non-negotiable for Steve Sarkisian. It's why Jatavian Sanders took so long to take over that position, and it's why there still was so much left on the bone, I think, from the Texas staff. Whenever Gunnar Helm came in, they said, you know what? We feel like this is the freest the offense has been. They never got to that position with Amari Black. You add in the blocking, you add in some penalties and special teams, and I think there was also a lack of trust at that as that second tight end spot as well. So that's ultimately what it was. Unfortunate that he departed, because obviously you look at the youth in the room, say we'd like to have a veteran guy with at least some snaps, right? He came in with 360 snaps at Alabama before coming to Texas. And right now you look at what that Texas tight end room is, and well, there's not a single reception on the roster going into 2025. So you'd like to have some veteran guys, but I think Texas will be just fine at the tight end spot because of who they have in the sense of physicality, athleticism, and upside is probably as good as we've seen holistically in this room since, well, JT's junior year with Helm waiting in the mold. You just didn't know what he would turn into.
Hey, I got a very important question. Yes, I'm staying on for the basketball game. If Jeff, anybody wants to stay on, have free. This is a very important question for young CJ in the business. This is advice, but do you have a Marriott Bonvoy number yet? I mean, are you staying in Marriott? You build up your trip, build up your hotel rooms for free trips,
points,
right?
Baby, points.
You're thinking ahead, right? Because I thought I was too late to the game on this. I'm just going to be
Mobile does not have a plethora of Marriott hotels, unfortunately. Also, I booked this one, I think, right outside of Baton Rouge. So I've known I was coming to Mobile for about a month and a half now. That tells you how much I plan ahead. Yeah. Oh, shoot, I'm in Baton Rouge. I got to get a place to stay. It's getting dark outside.
So not Marriott this trip?
No. Okay. No.
Whatever your hotel chain of choice is, CJ, get those points.
No, CJ does not plan ahead. That dude on a whim went to Vegas. Like literally within where'd you book your flight to Vegas? No,
Jeff,
no hotel. Just went.
Jeff, you haven't heard this story. Last year for the Super Bowl, I took a nap at like 4:00. I woke up, texted a couple buddies, "Hey, what are we gonna do tonight? It's a Friday night. We got any plans?" One of them texted me back, one of those Instagram ads said, "Yo, Vegas looks good tonight." We booked a flight 2 hours. We were on a flight from Austin to Vegas.
I love it.
7:15. We didn't book a hotel. We brought a backpack, and we left Vegas to come back to Austin at 8:30 the next morning. It was a long night, but it was a lot of fun.
Exactly.
By the way, CJ, I do this. You are going to the combine, I believe.
Yes, that's the plan. I will go look at a Marriott spot up in Indianapolis, probably right after this call.
It'll be interesting to see what NFL coach you have to wake up that falls asleep in the stands during the runnings of the 40.
Speaking of planning ahead, CJ does not because he went to the wrong airport in Houston once. CJ, he's living on the edge all the time.
Hey, by the way, those waiting on the ESPN Ole Miss, that it's ESPN2. It will pop on after the end of this Texas Tech TCU game, which is a minute left.
All right, and don't forget, guys. Jerry's gonna stay on after this live stream gets done. We're just gonna continue the live stream. Like it's just gonna boom. It's gonna continue with Jerry as a kind of pseudo in-game live watch, but also talking recruiting with you guys too. So that's gonna be fun. I'm sure of it. Hopefully, man, I'm nervous for Chris Beard. I'm not gonna lie. I'm nervous for Rodney Terry in this thing. I'm a little nervous for him. I'm not gonna lie about that.
Our friend Jason Watt says it's on ESPN News right now until the end of the Texas Tech game, because of course Texas Tech would have to run over to keep Texas from being on there, right? They can't do anything fast in sports except get the 7 losses.
Is this like seeing Texas and Chris Beard in the same game? Is this like a nightmare for Tech fans? It's like the nightmare game.
Oh man, I didn't think about that. Right, Jose with the super chat. Thank you, we appreciate it. What's next year's season's expectation / record with our current roster, and what do we need to add in the spring portal to reach their ceiling? Thank you for the super chat, Jose. I'll throw this one to you, Jeff. I mean, obviously, you got a long way to go because spring and you got the portal too. But what are the expectations for this team this upcoming season with all the kind of new faces?
I mean, I've said this before. I start every season when I have confidence in the staff and the talent and everybody and all the players they've recruited. Blue blood in the portal. I start years at 10-2, unless you have Vince freaking Young. Okay, so I start at 10-2, and again, it's the same scenario. It's been the last 2 years for me. See what the spring looks like, see what Texas looks like in the spring, who they add in the portal. But you're at Ohio State to start the year, right? And they have a ton to replace, more than Texas. But then you have road games at Florida and at Georgia. I mean, the road schedule's tougher this coming season for Texas than it was last year. So I start at 10-2, and you know what? I adjust there. If Texas goes to the shoe and wins, then suddenly things turn to 11-1 possibility, because again, it's going to be hard to roll through the SEC. I mean, unscathed anymore. The conference is, I mean, even what did Nick have? 4 undefeated seasons in the SEC in 15 or 5 maybe? I mean, in regular season. So it's extremely difficult. So I start 10-2, and let's see what things look like in the spring, and we'll go from there.
I think to me at this point, this far out, I think if you're going into if the A&M game is important, then it'll be a good year. In other words, you're playing to get into the SEC championship game. You're playing hey, if you win, you're kind of a lock for the playoff at that point, whatever it is. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm a little more I'm kind of a step behind you, Jerry. I'm not calling win numbers. I'm just saying, hey, if the A&M game is important, you had a good year.
Yeah. By the way, there's some great road trips for Texas fans next year. Yes. I mean, Ohio State, well, that's dangerous. So, but sorry, Ohio State fans, but we have Georgia James in here at Florida, at Georgia. If you're going to go to a couple of road games next year, man, those are tremendous places to go watch a game.
You're not going to Starkville?
No,
not. Not happening. See, CJ's like, I'm going. All right. Juan here with a super chat says, at Jerry, what do position coaches make in the NFL? Is it less than college coaches?
Yeah, we can all chime in on that. I think it depends. It depends on where you're coaching college.
I was going to say, yeah, exactly. Depends on where you are.
I mean, look, if you're a co-C, I'll just throw this out. Like, if you're a co-C offensive line coach like a Kyle Flood and you're making 1.5 in college at Texas, you're not going to make that as an OL coach in the NFL. Tashard Choice probably makes as much or more at Texas than he would in the NFL. Now, I think the salaries are catching up a little bit at position coaches. But I think by and large, than at the college level. You're especially if you have that coordinator tag, kind of you're a co-OC and position coach, CJ, Jeff, you're going to make more in college games salary-wise than you will in the NFL.
I think if we're talking about Tashard Choice, I feel like if he was going to lead to take an NFL, and I could be wrong, if he was going to lead to take an NFL assistant coaching job, he would have done it already. I really think next stop for Tashard Choice is college head coach.
It's some of that Stan Drayton path, basically.
Yeah.
What's interesting with the NFL is just how much less you have to work, right?
Yeah.
You know, if it's a comparable pay, raise, whatnot, if it's comparable at all, I mean, life has to be significantly simpler in the NFL just for the fact that you get an off season, right? You know, the dead period's coming up, and I'm sure these college coaches, I spoke with a few today at the Senior Bowl, they're like, thank God, man. I mean, even for schools that didn't really go too far into the postseason, it's just so much going on. They're on the road constantly. The portal's always an issue. You got to deal with NIL and making sure that your room isn't looking to go elsewhere, especially if you're not at a Texas or an Ohio State or, a Georgia, basically. You're always kind of looking over your shoulder and needing the reassurances that your room is going to stay intact because that's your job, that's your livelihood for the next year. NFL, those guys sign a contract, right? And unless they vastly underperform and the GMs had enough, they're going to be here the next week. You don't necessarily always know that in college. So I do think taking a pay, decrease, a pay cut to take a job in the NFL, it's not uncommon anymore, right? That's kind of been what we've seen over the last year and a half, 2 years. And it makes all the sense. And I wouldn't blame a single college coach at all if they said, let me kick my feet up for 4 months out of the year and get to relax and hang out with my family.
By the way, it's 11-2 Texas going to the under 16 timeout. 2 possessions ago, Jordan Pope hit a corner three. You're going to start to see and I wasn't going to give this away. You're going to start to see Kaluma is trying to play tonight. He's not 100%. You're going to start to see Devin Pryor more. Texas needs to get more athletic with size on the wing in their estimation at times. So you're going to see Devin Pryor play more of a role, but 2 possessions to get to 9-2. They had 5 or 6 quick passes in the half court. The ball did not stick at all. If Texas is going to win this game tonight, you need 35, 40 possessions like that. The ball if you're not going to be a cutting team, that ball can't stick. You got to catch and move, and you got to make Ole Miss continue to rotate and move their feet. And Texas had 2 really good offensive possessions in a row. Onyema, it looks like he got mauled, no call, but it's 11-2 under 16 timeout.
To your point, Jerry, looking at the box score right now, the one number I like, 4 assists, 5 field goals. Yeah. So that tells me the ball's not sticking.
Yeah, if the ball sticks tonight, they'll score 60 and lose. And you can't do that against Chris Beard. I mean, I look at when I have great respect for Beard. He is a tremendous basketball coach. I would go in and watch him practice, and it would sit, and I'll tell a story. It kind of sucks because he's not the coach, but I was sitting there watching a practice. I took my son, and we were sitting literally front row watching a practice. And Beard walked over. He said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Man, this was going into year 2." I said, "Unbelievable, greatly improved basketball team." And he asked my son. He said, "What do you think?" And my son said, "It looks like they're playing for their lives." And Chris Beard smiled and walked away. That's how hard guys play for him on the defensive end. It was a mauling physically of a 2-hour practice. So got to keep the ball moving, else you will get mauled defensively.
Like that. Good stuff, Jerry. Let's thank our sponsor before we move on. Let's thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery, and then we'll answer some more questions and get to Football Junkie Super Chat. Did you know the most awarded wine in Texas is actually vineyard closest to Austin? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award for their vintage wine, Super Texan. It is fantastic. Actually got some Super Texan, or at least maybe we had some Super Texan in the house. That's how good it is. It doesn't last long. All right. My wife loves it. Her mom loves it. My mom loves it. Actually got a chance to enjoy some Super Texan over the holidays with the family. It's now available at your local Specs, so give it a try. Also, I saw a display of Flat Creek wine at the local Central Market here, so the good word is getting around. Flat Creek Estate Winery not only produces premium wines, but also is a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tasting weddings every single weekend. So you can check them out at flatcreekestate.com. Perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery. And I really appreciate them for being a part of the Owen, Texas football family. That's flatcreekestate.com. You can go check them out or go check out their wine selection, or you can go book a reservation to enjoy their fantastic venue. All right, let's get back to the Super Chat. Football Junkie, who leads this team with sacks? He says, I have Simmons with 12.
CJ has Simmons with 21. He flipped the numbers. By the way, Tom Hart's doing the game tonight at A&M Tears from Saturday.
Who you got?
21 might be a little out of the picture, but if they're playing 16 games again, I think he very easily could get to the teens. I think that's very, very attainable for Colin Simmons. And also, you look at the numbers Trey Moore was able to put up in the second half of the season. Since November 9th, 6.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. That's a guy that I think could reach double digits next year as well. Look, it took him, 6 games, I think, to get his first tackle for loss. I mean, he just didn't really come on until halfway through the season. And when he found it, when it clicked, oh man, that was tough for both teams or for both edges. If you don't have 2 good tackles, speaking of which, we've talked about Texas's tackle combination this year. After watching LSU this year and seeing how they've kind of been marketed as the other program that could really kind of stack up with Texas, Cam Williams, Kevin Banks, it's not been a great week for Emory Jones out here in Mobile. He's had Baron Sorrell got the best of him on that run shed rep the other day, but his youth is really coming out against this upper talent, which I think Texas fans should be a little bit appreciative of the year Cam Williams had.
I want to say one thing about the basketball game real quick. I'll chime in every now and then. If watching this, Padula, the Virginia Tech transfers the shooter from Ole Miss, you can't lose him on screen switches, especially they're not going to invert the offense, but if he's ever a screen or slip guy, you cannot lose him. He knocks down open threes at 40%.
Yeah. Ole Miss on a 7-0 run, by the way. You guys realize Texas hasn't had a double-digit sack guy since Jackson Jeffcoat? Jeffcoat in 2013 was the last guy to get double-digit sacks. That's kind of hard. A minute who had 9.5, he got close, but so as long as I don't have to look back and think back to when Greg Robinson, who no longer roams this earth, was calling defense to find the last double-digit sack guy. As long as somebody gets there, I don't care who it is. Just want that factoid gone.
Yeah, Simmons is definitely going to get double-digit sacks.
Yeah,
there's no doubt. I mean, just because if he plays more. The truth is, if he plays more and they play more than NASCAR, he had 9 sacks. 7 of them came in that NASCAR package. And honestly, Trey Moore, 5 sacks he had in the NASCAR package too. I mean, they were deadly. Hell,
we've talked about this on Coffee and Football. But Rod, Jeff, I haven't got you guys' opinion. I think CJ, we've talked about it a little bit. I think Texas is going to be even a better pass rushing team next year because I think they're going to be able to rush their passer from – and I know PK doesn't have a high blitz rate, but they're going to be able to rush the passer effectively at more positions than any Texas team I remember. I mean, Brad Spence is an underrated pickup to me. You have a Jelani McDonald. If he plays a lot of snaps at nickel, he's going to be a blitz candidate off the edge at nickel. But, you have the ability – you literally have the ability to move Anthony Hill off the edge at times and roll Brad Spence right in there or play them together and play Brad Spence in the middle. But Texas is going to have more pass rushing options and more ways to create pressures than any Texas team I remember, guys. I don't know if y'all think along the same lines as I do, but that's where I'm coming out with this group. I think linebackers will be the most improved position in the program next year.
That's a good point. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, because Anthony Hill, I mean, he's just naturally a great pass rusher coming off the edge. Colin Simmons, BGO is otherworldly. Trey Moore, natural pass rusher. And we don't know what we're going to get from Burke and Colin Vosick about, I don't know what his injury issue is and what his timeline for recovery is. But, I mean, you just got so much depth there. No, I'm with you. That's a good point. I got to go back and look. I'm sure some of those teams, I got to ask like guys like Alex Okafor and a couple of years where they had a couple of like some of those edges where Texas had quality edges and depth on the edges too for a few years. But I'm with you. I don't know if they've had guys that can rush at multiple positions like this. That's a great point.
Yeah, Jelani McDonald at nickel, Jerry. That's the key to me right there, to have the pass rushers at multiple levels, because not a pass rusher, because how can you gauge a safety as a pass rusher? Michael Taft ended up being a really good blitzer this past season. So yeah, I agree with you. And one thing I do want to see, that boundary corner. PK loves bringing that blitz off the boundary. Who's going to be that boundary corner that you bring on blitz? Is it Kobe Black? He fits the mold. He fits the body type to play into the boundary. I say that, but Rod, you hit on it in the spring after the spring game. They were getting away from field and boundary.
I hate that damn boundary corner blitz. I hate it. It never gets home. I mean, the last time it almost got home was a Bama game. It was a beautiful cause. First time that it actually hit, and then he missed it because Bryce Young's a great player. But I hate that damn call. I do. I would say that Janae Barnes was a good blitzer too. They have good blitzers in the secondary, but I don't like the boundary corner blitz because the boundary corner they don't disguise it well enough. They always give it away, in my opinion.
Georgia disguised it pretty well.
Exactly. They always, they did it against us really well, but we've never. I don't think.
Well, that's Will Muschamp helping build a game plan, Rod. We should expect nothing less than excellence.
Great point. That's a great
Rod,
point.
can I ask you about Ethan Burke? Because that was a conversation I had earlier today at the Senior Bowl with someone asking, who could be next up for Texas. And obviously, when you talk about Trey Moore, Colin Simmons off the edge, they get all the glitz and the glamour. But Ethan Burke, with his length, another year of work, what's a ceiling? What's a good year for Ethan Burke in 25?
That is a good question. Because it might not. I would like to see him as a guy that kind of taking on the path like Barron Sorrell, because I would like to see him become more consistent just versus the run. I think he can be a guy that can be dominant versus the run. I think he's got that kind of profile. I don't know if he's gonna fit the the characteristics of those elite edge, those basically those guys who can create pressure off the edge. So we're talking about the Trey Moore and Colin Simmons. I see him more in kind of what the role that Barron Sorrell had with the team. Also a guy that ended up being, I think, a better pass rusher. I think it was an added resource for Texas, and one that was unanticipated, that he got. What did Barron Sorrell have? 6 sacks for you this year? Somewhere around there. So I believe it was somewhere around there. I believe he had and actually 3.5 of those actually came out of the NASCAR package too. Just looking at my NASCAR notes. But I think, and that's the question too. Which one? I think Ethan Burke is he the guy that bumps inside on the NASCAR package, or is it Vosick that bumps inside on the NASCAR package? I think the goal should be for Ethan Burke. He would like to be that guy potentially that can, bump inside like Barron Sorrell did. But maybe they think Colton Vosick could be that guy. It's going to be one of those two guys. But like I said, I see him very much to fill the role that Barron Sorrell had.
I'm going to throw one out there because it's a question, and I'm going to throw a little nugget out I heard today as well. Do you expect Zena to be part of the rotation? I'm not saying that, but I was told today that he's got a real chance and that they are very happy with where he may head as a player. So just something to watch. And we talked about it, I think, on Coffee and Football yesterday. With Vosick out, he's going to get a lot of reps.
Yep.
And when the door gets cracked, sometimes guys blow through it. He's about to have a chance to blow through it. But he was a guy that I was told today there's very high hopes for him on the development ascension he was on in this season behind the scenes when he was redshirting. So we'll see if it comes to fruition, but I think there's some high hopes for Zena.
I'll add to that. Just seeing Zena walking around at practice for the Peach Bowl in Georgia, completely different looking player than what he was in high school. And we saw that very briefly, Jerry, in the spring, really early on. It was really the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando where we saw that transformation start to take form, right? He was about 230, 235 at the time. He looks like he's probably 255 and carrying it very well. And he was walking right alongside with Lance Jackson. So if there's any indication of the health of that room, it's those two, two youthful guys that you certainly want coming off the bus first. And I say this as one of the bigger Colton Vosick fans that you'll find covering the team. I think his quick twitch is there. Just got to stay healthy and get that opportunity. Because, again, when he is on the field, and we saw it last year, 2 sacks and about 30 pass rush opportunities. That's a pretty good hit rate. Question is, what can he do to consistently find the field, and what can he do to consistently stay healthy? That's been kind of nagging him since really his junior year of high school.
Rod, am I crazy for thinking a good bar for Ethan Burke on his season for expectations for him would be 2018 Charles Omenihu?
Ooh, give me them. That was
like
the stats that he had back then.
It's like 9.5 sacks.
Ooh, that's a high number for. I don't know. You think Ethan Burke can get 9.5 sacks?
That's a high number in my eyes.
I think that's a big number for me.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say Baron Sorrell's numbers would be perfect for him because I don't see Baron Sorrell as a natural pass rusher.
Right.
But he's got great motor, he's smart, and I think he's got, he's got a kind of a well-rounded skill set as a defensive lineman. And that's why I think Sorrell has 6 sacks. And Ethan Burke's goal should be what Sorrell was in the NASCAR packages. That means the coaches trusted him, enough to be able to play multiple gaps, and that'll give him a chance to up his stats. Guys, I'm telling you, the NASCAR package helped everybody's stats. Like 7 of Simmons, 7 of his 9 sacks, NASCAR package. Trey Moore, 5 of his sacks. He had 5.5. Baron Sorrell, 3.5 of his 6 sacks came in the NASCAR package. If you want to be on the field when they're doing that, whatever they're doing, because it's a feeding frenzy in havoc plays. Yeah. So that's why I say Ethan Burke, that should be his goal. It might be Vosick, though, getting back to what CJ said, because he's twitchy. He's twitchy. And I think he is a natural pass. I think he's a natural disruptor. He makes plays in the backfield. He penetrates.
You know who who Vosick reminds me of? If he can ever just stay healthy? The Ohio State ends. The bigger power ends that also have enough juice to rush the quarterback in different ways, with not just speed, but power to speed. And by the way, I'll say this too. What I think could help Ethan Burke next year is, I think we've seen enough, and those that have been with us a long time know we have a guy named Nathan O'Neill that's been on this show. I think he's coaching D-line at the Senior Bowl, CJ. But Nathan O'Neill, he trains a bunch of guys for the draft. He works Von Miller pass rush camp. He's the best I've ever seen at this stuff, and known him for years. Used to coach Under Armour game when I was ESPN. But when Kenny Baker was hired, I called him and I said, "Tell me about Kenny." He said, "Best young pass rush coach that I know." And I think that's coming to fruition, guys. I think Kenny Baker is having a huge impact on Texas because he works with the edges too. I'm not talking interior. He's a pass rush specialist guy. And that could help Ethan Burke having 2 years, a second year to work with him this spring.
I like that.
Yeah, Jerry, I sat in on Kenny Baker's lecture at THSCA last summer, and he was talking about pass rush and comparing it to Bo Davis, and even getting to watch a little bit of practice. Bo is more of kind of that old school,
Pete Jenkins.
That Nick Saban 2-gap where you kind of want to engage and then find the ball. Kenny Baker's is more, hey, get the hands off of you, get free, go upfield and be disruptive. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Tying the two together from what I heard him talk about last summer.
And Jeff, that carries on the conversation we had about earlier today with Bobby Burton on State of the Program is what can Texas get out of this defensive line room, right? We're not expecting Cole Brevard or Travis Shaw or now Hero Canoe to be big-time sack number guys. They never have been. But what we can expect is an increase, pressures from the interior. Again, that's going to be what makes Vernon Broughton an intriguing NFL option, whether he gets drafted or not. He has too much good film of pressures on the quarterback, getting hands up in passing lanes or strip sacks, which he had multiple of this year. That's going to be something that I think carries over with Kenny Baker this year, is finding guys who haven't ever been pass rush specialists from the interior and finding something out of them that makes them threats in that game.
Hey, somebody said something earlier. I think it was Jason Watts, my buddy, said something earlier. big hoops guy himself, about Trey Johnson. Watching this game, anybody that's followed this knows Chris Beard is not going to let Trey Johnson beat him. Trey Johnson will set a career high in assists tonight and he just had a great one on the ball screen game to Shedrick for a dunk. If he is patient, accepts the double, and is patient with the double and finds where the rotation's coming from, Trey Johnson will have 7-8 assists in this game tonight. Beard's not going to let him go off. If Trey Johnson will facilitate from the double, he'll set a career high in assists tonight.
Texas jumping passing lanes currently. I want to say they're 2 for 9 to start from 3, but a 6-point lead, you'll certainly take that right now. So good start for Texas on the road as they reach the under 8 coming up here soon.
No, I'm with you. Let's a couple of questions before we just obviously shift over to the kind of the Texas basketball kind of live stream here. But CB has a question for you, CJ. Said CJ had an interesting tweet about Quinn and the Senior Bowl quarterbacks. You've been there observing these Senior Bowl quarterbacks. From what you've seen, you think Quinn's stock could rise if these are the guys he's being compared to, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I say that because look, we've talked about it for the last month, right? What is Quinn's draft stock going to be? I talked to somebody who said mid-round. So 3 is kind of that starting point. What can he do to rise? Well, look, you put Quinn in one of these situations, and obviously he's not here, but the one-on-one routes it should be an offense favored event, right? You get in the 7-on-7. It should be offense favored because you know the routes, you know the expected coverage, whatnot. There are so many passes skipping. There are so many passes that are errant. In 7-on-7 or in the live team portions, it feels like a miracle anytime a pass is completed. And I know stitching together a defense in these games is significantly easier when it comes to which side of the ball will have more success, because offensive line continuity and communication is imperative. But the quarterback accuracy that I've seen today, and really Tuesday as well, it makes Quinn Ewers look like the best quarterback of all time. And it really hasn't been pretty. It's not a great quarterback class to begin with. And I had a conversation with somebody today about Quinn, who, again, he told me a mid-round guy, but the one thing that's really going to help Quinn is he's going to be a really young quarterback. Does that mean he's going to vault up the boards? Probably not. But when you look at one team needing a quarterback for the future, watching him at the combine, watching him at the pro day, someone's going to fall in love with the arm. Because as we talked about last year, one pass, Jerry, you were there, one pass at the ground maybe out of the 30 passes that he threw?
Yeah, the on-air pro day is going to be his strength for sure. That is going to be his strength headed into the NFL draft. On the on-air workout, he's going to dazzle, and then it's going to cause all these NFL GMs to go back and watch that film again.
Yes,
and compare the pro day to what they saw on the field. He's going to be a conundrum for them, I think, in the draft, because the tape is not going to match what they see in person.
Right.
Where Jalen Milroe's inaccurate either way. You know what you're getting with Jalen Milroe.
And that's the circle.
You don't know what you're getting with Quinn.
Yeah, that's the cycle. Is you're going to see the shorts and T-shirts and say, wow, this guy is probably as accurate as we'll see. And you go watch the tape and you say, okay, we need to see more. So I've not really been impressed with Jalen Milroe. I think Jackson Dart's been really inaccurate. The best quarterback here by my count is Dillon Gabriel. And, we've talked about a ceiling for Dillon Gabriel as a quarterback, but I've kind of talked myself into Dillon Gabriel having a pretty lengthy career in the NFL just because he's played 50 career games, right? He's seen so much football at high levels. There's going to be some sort of value for him. On top of that, Riley Leonard, I think he struggles a little bit finding his first, second, third reads. To me, just watching who's in attendance this week, it's come a little bit more to seeing Quinn Ewers having a path to go earlier than expected, given the finish and some of what we saw on the field this year.
Hey, here's a good question for everybody. And by the way, I'm going to throw this up. Yeah, KD had 30 20-point games as a freshman. We'll never see anything like that guy again at Texas in basketball. I'm safe in saying that. Any tall receivers in the Horns' future like a 6'6"er? Look, Sark hasn't recruited one of those guys, CJ, Jeff, Rod. They're just and maybe there's a super freak that comes along, but it's going to have to be a super freak that comes along. But that does not really Sark's MO. He's and what's going to be interesting, I think, with Arch is you're seeing more of the outside guys that could also, move around a little bit. So the back shoulder ball, the timing throws come back into the offense because that's going to be a strength of Arch's. That was not the strength of Quinn's, and that's not comparing him. Guys have different strengths and weaknesses. But you're going to see the back shoulder balls come back into the offense, Rod, but there just hadn't been that 6'6" guy that Sark has recruited at wideout. 6'4" has been the tallest guy they've recruited.
Yeah, that's a Tom Herman thing. Yeah, he seems to have I think the traits that he covers. Getting back to Jeff's point earlier in the show, he wants speed. There are certain physical traits, and if you have those traits on a 6'6" guy, then you're talking about Calvin Johnson type stuff. You're talking Randy Moss, Megatron stuff, and that's just rare. So I think that's more what it's. But the guys are getting taller. That's clear. They're taller than they used to be. All right, let's thank a third sponsor of the evening, our friends over at South Point Dodge. Hey, Texas football fans, you can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. They have over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including a great selection of Ram 1500s, 3500s, and 2500s as well. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. And right now, they actually have a great selection. Speaking of great deals, they have a great deal happening with over 50 Ram 2500s right now, all marked down with huge savings over at South Point Dodge. Now you can go to southpointdodge.com and you can see their inventory there, or you can go and see it in person off I-35 in South Austin. You can check out their inventory there. Like I said, over 600 vehicles in stock right now. So plenty of vehicles to choose from, and whatever your truck needs, remember South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. That's Austin's automotive everything, southpointdodge.com. Really appreciate them being a sponsor of the Wednesday night live stream and being a part of the Owen Texas football family. That's southpointdodge.com. All right. Thank you guys for all of the super chats. I think Jerry's got some questions rolling in here. So we'll start to transition because I know Jerry's about to start giving you guys his play-by-play, kind of the breakdown, the in-game live watch of Texas right now winning 30-19. It's a beautiful thing.
Balls moving, players are moving enough. But they're making the extra pass in the first half tonight, and you have to do that against Chris Beard's defense. Somebody asked my under the radar prospect for 2026. Look, I give credit where credit's due on this. Scott Surratt at Carthage. When I was on my way up to see Dylan Berryman, I stopped off in Carthage and visited with Coach Surratt and his son Jed. I was watching him play a little golf, and we were talking about KJ Edwards and DeQueeves Beck, the linebacker. Both those guys were at Texas Junior Day. And he mentioned Carson Crawford, his other linebacker, who I think has UTSA and he's way under recruited. If you haven't watched Carson Crawford at Carthage, he's bigger than he's listed. He's probably 6'2.5", 220, 215, 220 now. He's going to run in the 4.5s. He's a physical, tough kid like you would think at Carthage. There's linebacker depth in this state. It's going to be underappreciated until these guys are deep in the college in this class, 26. Carson Crawford's the most underrated, most under-recruited guy in the state right now, in my opinion. He's really good.
Nice. All right. Thanks for that question, G-Town Eagle. How about this one, though? Just since you answered a couple of questions, I thought this one was interesting. It says, trying to find it here. How about this one? It says, what about I think it says, why do Texas keep recruiting wide receiver ones in the portal? Here it is from V Brown. Will we ever get to a point when we don't have to look to the portal for a wide receiver one? I would say CJ probably has the best take on this. And I think Sark probably agrees with the way we've seen him attack wide receiver in the portal, right?
Yeah, I just don't think there's ever a reason not to go get a guy that's proven it, right? You see what it's done already for Texas. Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, A.D. Mitchell. That's pretty darn good. Imagine where they'd be without it. Now, you look at what Ohio State was able to build organically through high school recruiting. That's a tough thing to do. That comes with years and years and years of development, NFL output to get to where they are with a Carnell Tate, a Brandon Ennis, Jeremiah Smith, a Emeka Egbuka. That's 4 5 stars. That's 4 guys that were all within the top 20, 25 in their respective recruiting classes, that's a tough thing to do. Now, Texas is inching closer, right? You get a Ryan Wingo, that's a big win out of state. You go out and you land a Jamie French, big win out of state. Khalid Lockett, keeping one of the big 5-star top prospects in the state of Texas. Does that mean that Texas is now going to become Ohio State offensively? No, but you're getting closer. If you can get in that conversation to land, a top 5 wide receiver every single year, you'll be set up for a really good wide receiver room that's healthy with natural attrition all the way leading up. But to get to where Ohio State was, that's as stacked a position room as you'll find in all of the country. But I do think Texas is inching closer. My thing with the portal is, why would you not, right? Your individual receiving rooms on a year-in, year-out basis, they're going to have different strengths. They're going to have different weaknesses. Right now, Texas needs a guy that can take the top off the field, right? A true speedster, one of those guys that's built 5'11", maybe 180 pounds, and that they just fly. Is there one of those guys out there? Currently not right now in the portal, but we'll see what that looks like in the spring. But I do think Texas will go get a one-and-done speedster type of wide receiver, and it just totally complements what they already have in the room, in which we know you got a guy that does the dirty work with DeAndre Moore. You got a big playability guy with Ryan Wingo, Parker Livingstone, another big body on the outside who's been cross-trained at all 3, who can step up amongst the youngsters. But right now, the easiest solution is to go out and get somebody out of the portal, because we know that those guys have played good football, they have production, and they're here for – well, really, it's a contract year for them.
Yeah, I'll back you up on that, CJ, in terms of building a receiver room. I think part of it is when you look at the times when Texas has gone to the portal to get receivers, especially loading up for last season getting A.D. Mitchell, and then for this past season getting Golden and Bond. I think you can trace it back to the 2021, even though Sark only was responsible for a little bit of that cycle. But 2021 and 2022, you think about the wide receivers in those 2 classes, Xavier Worthy was the only one you really got anything out of. I mean, Keith Ron Lee, Jaden Alexis.
Keith Ron Lee didn't even make it to a workout.
Yeah, he didn't last very long. Did
Micah Hudson was like, that guy got out of here quick.
You had Brennan Thompson. I mean, Savion Red was technically a wide receiver take that you ended up moving to running back. So yeah, I just think that's part of it. Just replenishing. But, Rod, we spent a lot of time talking about bust rates and hit rates and NFL development rates, and that's the saving grace with the portal is, 23 and 24 could have been seasons where in the past, if you're Texas, man, you're just kind of screwed, and you just got to play, hey, Ryan Wingo and Jonte Cook, you guys just got to step up and play. But no, now you can go fill in the gaps. That's what I like what Sark does with the portal, is taking a look at your roster and filling gaps. It's really hard to just constantly have that turnover and that reload every year. So right now I like the way they're doing it, and hopefully you get to the point where you're using the portal less and less, and the portal's just to add maybe those 1 or 2 pieces that you feel like can put you over the top.
Hey, by the way, somebody said in the chat, I can't remember who, maybe 2 people. Yes, Kendall Weaver's injured. I actually don't know when he's coming back. He's been out longer than expected. This is giving a chance for Devin Pryor to really grow up for Texas, and he's going to end up being a really good player. By the way, one other thing to watch in this game, against a Chris Beard coach team, you saw this for years, whether it's Lubbock, Texas, now at Ole Miss. They run what's called monster doubles on a post catch. They run big to trap when a big catch is in the post with a big guarding him. So they're going to run monster doubles. Caden Shedder, any Texas post, they know monster doubles coming. You have to hold your ground. If you catch the ball outside 10, 12 feet in the post here and they run a monster double, that's going to take away all your chance to beat that rotation with timing. So post, they got to hold their position. You want to invite a monster double, but you want to invite the monster double at 6 feet where Ole Miss is really forced to rotate.
All right.
Jerry, what do you think of Devin Pryor so far tonight?
Really athletic. He's a guy that graduated high school a year early, and that's going to get us to an Xavier Crowell running back comment, not commercial. Devin Pryor graduated from high school early. So last year was really his learning year. He should have been a senior in high school. So this should really be his first year in college. So he's on track because he was a raw kid with a lot of upside. And this is really huge growth for him because Texas has to get longer, more athletic, continue. And I'm not talking in the post. I'm talking on the wings in the SEC. I mean, this is a big athletic long arm league, and you have to have some run and jump athletes on the court. And to see Devin Pryor start to get time, I'm glad Texas went to that move because they're more athletic and longer on the perimeter, but that can also play in transition because that kid can really run and play at the top of the square. That gives you a nice piece in the SEC to compete with the athletes you have to defend on the other end. By the way, so Xavier Crowell, somebody asked about Emory class of the 26. He is going to officially visit Texas June 6th through 8. He confirmed that to us today. These kids, a lot of these kids that are highly ranked, I mean, I'm just going to be real. They're graduating early to speed up their NIL clock. I mean, that if they can get through high school a year early and get into college and start their NIL clock, they're all going to try to do it. Even when profit sharing hits in July, that's what's really behind this as much as anything. And if I was them, I'd do the same thing, honestly. Why take 300 carries your senior year in high school as a running back if you get out early?
Well, and you need to do it before there's any type of legislation, federal legislation that starts to, cap things about, NIL. No, right now it's the Wild Wild West. It's time to cash in. You got to go. I agree.
Somebody's asking about Trey Johnson being picked in the top 10. Yes. The question is, does he have a chance to go 5, 6, 7 in that range? I think he does. And if you go top 7 in this draft, you're probably going to be an all-star at some point in your career. Last draft was the worst in history. This draft is tremendous.
I never got it, man. I never even got the $100 handshakes. I never got any of that stuff. I don't know.
But you saw a lot of them happen, right, Rod? I
heard about this. I got like some free stuff. Don't think I ain't get nothing for free. No, I got some free stuff.
Hey, we need to get BJ Johnson back on here to talk about Urban Meyer.
Exactly. Like, where was my offer? Where was the bag, man? I must not have been that good because
Jeff was laughing, so he heard about the BJ Johnson interview. I take it.
Yeah, I've heard about the
Urban.
That was Urban at touchdown Jesus at Notre Dame too, baby.
That's what I'm saying.
May or may not have been a storage closet or whatever it was that was involved in that, but
yeah. I never got it. I will say truthfully, I never got it. I never got anything. I never got any money.
We're gonna tell a story here because Jeff needs to get credit for this one. Jimmy Morgan asked a very key. Jeff, we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah, we were.
Jimmy Morgan, great super chat. Jerry, Jeff, CJ, how often are college coaches and UNT coaches reaching out to get details on recruits? Any stories you can tell us without telling names? We're going to tell you one name.
Uh-oh.
So JT Barrett. This is one of an all-timers. This is Jeff and I were working together at the time. And I went up to White Right to see Tyrone Swoops. Then a different college coach had told me, there's a dude in Wichita Falls that you got to go see. And it was JT Barrett. So I went to White Right, and I went over to Wichita Falls to see JT Barrett. And JT Barrett was as impressive on a first, time I met a young quarterback, just talking with him. He shook my hand. It felt like Adrian Peterson. I was like, this hurts, man. But then I started talking to him, and he was so mature. And he had a kind of a professional mindset about training for football. How does basketball help him as a quarterback and all this stuff? And I started asking him about colleges. Well, Baylor had offered him because, of course, Art Briles is the best quarterback evaluator their state's ever had. So he was on the guys early. He's like, yeah, I don't want to go there. I think Kansas State had offered him. He said, yeah, I just don't want to go there. He wanted an offer from Texas. That wasn't going to happen. We've been through that. So I called Jeff, and I said, Jeff. And then we went and saw him at a playoff game, too, and the wind was blowing like 30, and he's still good. And I said, Jeff, who do we know? Who do we know? We got to help this guy. He's really good, and he has 3 offers at the time. Remember this, Jeff?
Yeah.
We got to help this guy. And I was like, Jeff, who do you know? And Jeff happened to know Tom Herman from the Rice days, Jeff, and you can go from there.
Well, I had a friend who had a connection to Tom Herman, and this is days after Jerry and I are talking about this. And my buddy says, yeah, he says, I was talking to Tom about quarterbacks. They're checking on Tyrone Swoops, and they're looking at him. And kind of without thinking, I go, well, man, if he likes Tyrone Swoops, then he'd love JT Barrett. And he goes, really? He's like, yeah, he's a kid at Wichita Falls writer, blah, 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 blah. A couple of days later, JT Barrett's got an Ohio State offer.
Yeah.
Wow.
The rest is history.
Man.
Urban Meyer knew what he was looking at.
So Herb owes me for that national championship in 2014.
That's legit right there. I've never heard that story. That's an awesome story. That's pretty cool.
Jerry's gonna get out of me because I for years I've been like, man, if I really share that with Texas fans, that I'd turn the Ohio State staff on to JT Barrett. How's that gonna
Hey, Mac didn't offer after it's not Mac. Look, that's the game, man. The way I've always looked at this stuff is I don't care where any kid goes to school. Not my life. I don't care. But if I can help a kid get as many options as possible, I will do that 100% of the time. And I was so impressed with JT Barrett. I said it's a crime. One, that he wasn't ranked at the time. Then we ended up getting him ranked really high. It was a crime. He had like 3-4 offers the first time I met him. I was just like, this is obscene because Wichita Falls doesn't get a lot of foot traffic. It takes a long time to get to Wichita Falls and then anywhere back to DFW and around. So Wichita Falls doesn't get as much foot traffic. So all these colleges weren't going to go evaluate him. That's a kid that needed help. Yeah. He was really good. He needed somebody to help him have options. Again, I don't give a crap where any kid goes to school. I want them to go live their dreams. And that's part of our deal in this business. If we can't help a kid, what are we doing this for, man?
Yeah, when we met JT Barrett, Jerry, he in terms of leadership, and I told you this at the time. I don't know if you remember. In terms of leadership and just his presence, probably the closest thing I've seen to Colt McCoy at a high school quarterback.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just felt like this the kind of guy you look at him, you talk to him for 5 minutes, you're like, this dude can lead my huddle.
Yep, no doubt.
So you guys changed college football history then. So you changed college football history basically.
I impacted the first college football playoff.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. Oh, CJ, you got a question there from Carson. Carson, right? Doing a super chat. Thank you for the super chat there, Jimmy. CJ, what's your expectation for Texas baseball this year? Oh, that is a good one, actually.
Yeah, that's a great question. The alumni game is on Saturday, so really gearing up real close as Ole Miss cuts it to a 1-point game here after the free throw. Baseball, I'm excited for it. And Jeff, I know you were out at the media day with Coach Schlossnagel as well. We talked about it briefly with Blake Monroe afterward. The bats are going to be really, really fun this year. I think that's my big expectation going into the year. What does that mean in terms of what their overall season looks like? That's TBD. I think the pitching needs to take a step. Is that Jared Spencer? Is that Luke Harrison? Do they move a Jason Flores or Ruger Riojas to kind of an opener situation? We'll see. But I do think there's going to be a lot of runs scored this year. And with that said, you're going to be going up against some really impressive pitching staffs this year. For me, if Texas can get in a position to really host a regional, Jeff, I'll kind of steal that one from you because I know that's what you mentioned after we talked about it. If you can be in that top 20, top 15 range by the end of the year, you've had a heck of a first year considering the gauntlet that you're going to face in the SEC. There are a lot of unknowns right now for Texas, and that kind of puts pause to that for me in terms of season prediction. Again, I don't know who's going to be starting for your Sunday, weekend rotation. I don't know who really is going to take over that midweek role. You expect some young arms to take some steps, right? We've heard great things about Drew Valantis, Rarick as well. Some of these guys that Texas is very excited for, they're going to be young. What does that mean immediately this year? It's TBD. Did they do enough out of the portal on the mound to start games? That's going to be the big question mark, and ultimately depends on how far they go this year. But the bats are going to be, oh my goodness, I think they're going to be a lot of fun this year.
Yeah, I'm pumped up for Will Gasparino. He filled out in the offseason. The body looks different. And, dad's an MLB executive with the Dodgers, kids growing up around baseball, just a really good player, 6'5" center fielder. And by the way, in that inter squad that we were watching last Friday, poor Jared Spencer, he left an off-speed pitch hanging, and Gasparino just hit a tank, like probably 426 feet to dead center. So that got me excited. I'll say this about the lineup, and this kind of, like CJ said, I'm always in this day and age of college baseball. If you can get yourself in a position to host a regional, you've had a good year, especially in the SEC, which that takes some expectations. And I think you got to think a little bit different about this. Texas has been so good offensively under David Pierce the last few years that in a Big 12 series, it was really hard to beat them in a series because as you get into Saturday and Sunday, now you're talking about second, third starter. You're talking about guys deep into the bullpen. they were so good offensively, they would bludgeon mediocre to bad pitching. And quite frankly, you saw a lot of that in the Big 12. You're not going to get that in the SEC. You're going to get Sunday starters and Sunday bullpen guys that can run it up 97, 98 that are going to be major league arms. So it's just a different breed of baseball in the SEC. So, and the classic example, and I'll use it till the end of time to show how tough the SEC is in baseball. Go back to 2022. Ole Miss was the very last at-large team to get into the field, and they ended up winning the whole thing. Yep. So that's how good and deep the SEC is in baseball.
By the way, 38-34 at half. Tremendous first half offensively for Texas. I mean, that's a big number at Ole Miss against Beard's defensive teams. It's something to watch second half. Shedrick, Onyema, and Jason Kent have 2 fouls each. So three of your 4 interior players have 2 fouls in this game. So Shed's got to stay out of – he can't get his third early in the second half here.
Yep.
Great and you got to guard Padula. Padula hadn't missed a 3. He's missed 1 now, sorry, at the end of the half.
I like being +6 on the boards with 8 offensive rebounds, Jerry. I like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Texas, that's a strong first half for the Horns at Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is coming off a loss to Missouri, kind of an ugly loss for them, gave up 82 on the road, but Missouri's good. But anytime you hit over 35 and a half against on the road at Ole Miss, that's a good half. So if Texas can get to that 75 magic point number in this game, meaning they have to come back and do it again, that puts pressure on Ole Miss, because if Texas can get to 75, that means Ole Miss has to turn around and go 42 on you in the second half, and they can do it, but they're going to have to play. They're going to have to continue Texas guys in foul trouble in the interior.
Yep,
good deal.
All right, good stuff, Jerry. Appreciate you and the basketball analysis and all of the knowledge as always. Jeff, great job as always. Appreciate you, CJ. Thank you for all of the tidbits, and thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. Matthew is the real MVP. Can't do it without him. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to SouthPointDodge.com. Thank you to Dr. Brett Robin as well, and also thank you to our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery. You got the coffee and football in the morning. If we forgot to get to any of your questions or didn't get to them, we apologize for that, but you can direct them to the guys at Coffee and Football at 8 a.m. And then we'll have the winning drive at Thursday around 3:15 tomorrow. The winning drive with myself. I'm sure Jeff's going to jump on there as well. Coach Shipley as well. So we'll have some fun with that. So until next time, for Jeff, for Jerry, and for CJ, and for Matthew behind the scenes, welcome Horns.